Welcome to Crimson Guitars, welcome to the first video in the 90-hour build. A quick breakdown of what's happening. I built a guitar in 9 hours. Watch that video if you haven't, I'm not going to spoil the ending. And I had enough of that fantastically beautiful quilted or pommel sapele to make 2 entire guitars, so neck and body. And I built the 9-hour guitar out of that, and in the process of that video, or video series, I decided that I was going to do, and I randomly pulled 90 hours out of my hindbrain, there we go, and decided that I would do the same guitar basically, but actually spend 90 hours on it. Now, I'm not going to have a timer in the background and suspenseful music and all that. I'm just going to say, oh, well, there we go. I'm going to keep a rough count of the time, and that'll be that, because this is more, it's less about the actual amount of hours and more about saying this is what you can do if you actually take time over it. I know I can build a playable, for a given level of playability, a playable guitar in 6 hours or maybe even 4. But to actually build an instrument that is at the level that Crimson Guitars normally builds, you know, we build, we have several ranges. We've got the custom shop and production guitars, which are partially CNC made and then either customized or put together. But this is a full, we call them master built because we needed a name. I feel slightly arrogant calling it that, but hey. But a full master built guitar is 100% handmade, apart from, you know, stuff like hardware and logos and stuff sometimes. But it's a completely different beast, and that is what we live for. And something we don't actually advertise very much. It's implicit in a lot of our videos. It's not, hey, go and order a master build guitar from Crimson because we want you to. But hey, go and order a master build guitar from Crimson because we want you to. But anyway, this is an example of that, and I'm going to be filming the entire process. I will probably be using a tripod and manipulating the camera myself for the most part. Simply because of the amount of time it will take, which means it's going to take a little bit longer to film and build and all that, but it's cool. The bulk of the footage is going to be slung together, carefully edited, and put up on our Patreon for $20 and up Patreon supporters. But we will also be editing together each sort of 3 or 4 hours into a 15-minute sort of standard Crimson YouTube video as well. So if you want every single little detail, please consider supporting our Patreon. It really does, you know, it keeps Crimson alive, actually. You all know that we're a business and we sell tools and stains and guitars and stuff. But yeah, YouTube, you'd be surprised. Our budget just to keep the YouTube videos coming is in the tens of thousands. In fact, yeah, more than a few tens of thousands of pounds. But anyway, that is besides the point. Patreon viewers, $20 and up, will get not quite live stream, but you know, almost that level. And once a week, we hope YouTube viewers will be getting more of that. So without further ado, I'm going to work a little bit on the design and walk you through what that is, and start the build. I've been avoiding this one. I've got so many other things on, and I want this to be absolutely perfect that I've been procrastinating. And I've reached the point where I just need to start building. So go away, I'm going to start the build now. So the guitar that we have is limited by, not limited, defined. We have this piece of king wood, this piece of quilted sapele, and this piece of quilted sapele. And with those 3 pieces of wood and a few more, we are going to build this. Now it's the same guitar as the 9-hour build, so it is our PAF shape, twin humbucker, solid body, and set neck, etc. I can't really do very much different apart from these extra things. So I've got obviously a scratch plate, and there's going to be a lot of inlay work. I'm not sure if I'm really enjoying looking forward to that. I don't know. Anyway, it's going to be cool. But on top of that, the bulk of the work is going to be inlay and finish, and getting those as good as humanly possible. But it's also little bits and pieces of difference. I'm going to take the standard tuners and create custom tuner knobs for them, probably in that sort of a shape, probably in Kingwood maybe. We'll see, that's going to be fun. And then the same thing with the pickup cover stroke surround thing. It's going to be interesting. So the pickups are going to have a veneer and be built into that. I'm going to probably custom wind the pickups with the help of Sam, and I think the only thing I'm not going to be doing is building custom hardware, although that's tempting. I think even with 90 hours, that's a little bit impractical. Now, this sketch here represents about an hour's work, and the actual designs, the actual insects and bits and pieces, some of them will be there in the final build, some of them won't, and I'm going to be adding to that as I go. I could plan the entire guitar out to absolute perfection. I could get every single little facet of it drawn, and that does appeal to me to a certain extent. However, I'm not going to do that. I've got an idea of what I want to make. Once I've got the actual guitar in front of me, once I've built the body and I've got the neck partially made at least, ready for inlays, then I'm going to re-attack the design elements, because it's more of a fluid thing. The instrument will develop as I go, and I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, basically after the design phase, we're roughly an hour into this 90-hour build, so 89 hours to go. Let's start building, and let's start a voiceover. So we have this clock going, and that is going to be set to follow every single section. We don't have any center lines, no center lines, one-piece body. The clock will be live for every single second of recorded footage. We'll be speeding through some, editing some out, but the clock will jump through as you go. And I think in further episodes we're going to make it slightly less huge. So, onto the build, really. I've evolved. I used to I really like mechanical pencils now. They do tend to go through a lot more lead, but yeah, it's one of those things. I always thought that a 2H standard pencil, well sharpened, was the best option for a musical instrument maker of any sort. But I've changed my tune. I'm not going to be routing this from the top, but I do need to know where the holes can be located. Wisdom. So we'll put that there. That is going to be so pretty.
Still haven't marked a center line, but the rest of this template is lined up perfectly with the other lines that I've drawn. Now we put a center line in. Arguably I should have done that first, but there we go.
Center line is absolutely essential.
Of course.
Let's just double check that.
In this case, I'm starting with a set of templates that have already been made.
Yep, we're all good. So, fun times.
Did he just say fun times while stroking a piece of wood?
Oh, we have a different headstock, don't we?
We've just recently upgraded.
So the headstock has changed. And only just really fits in. Okay. Start with the center line. Now I'm using a click pencil, a mechanical pencil, shall we say. You could use a pen. It's not as accurate, but it was definitely easier to see. Okay. So let's get the headstock in first.
This time we're starting with the center line, as is the correct method. Everything on a build radiates out from that one line.
I'm debating how to how to route the truss rods. Yeah, so truss rod, and I'm going to put, because it's a one-piece neck, I'm going to put carbon fiber strengthening bars in there as well. We have a template. Essentially the edges here are one, rough, two, not parallel to the center line, and I can't, because I don't have enough space, I can't make them parallel. So at the moment that's 45, that's 40, so I can't just run a fence along the side, which is quicker and easier, but less necessary. So, or not entirely necessary. So I am going to bandsaw away the excess and end up with a body and a neck that roughly look the right sort of shape, and we'll go from there. bog oak of awesomeness that I nearly dropped. All right.
Always set the guard so that your
Head
hand,
fenders.
so that your finger cannot
Where are my head fenders?
hit the blade when you're pushing a piece of wood through.
Aha!
A large part of the time wasted in the guitar build is spent finding things and turning things on.
No power.
This is a very small bandsaw, but surprisingly useful for most tasks. The throat isn't quite as wide as we need on every now and then for a body, but other than that I get a lot more work done than I ever expected to, actually. It was meant to be there for templates and little bits and pieces. And then I go downstairs to use the big beasts. I'm cutting down as close to the line as I can without actually touching it. Generally within about 1 millimeter. This means I'm going to route away a lot less material than otherwise, which means that there's a lot less chance of it tearing out and causing long-term issues. At that point I was debating cutting the break angle in before cutting the sides off, but for some reason decided not to. So I'll just tape that back on in a bit and get it. There we go, save that. Like any good craftsman, I have a love and a desire to store offcuts. Surely they'll be useful one day. And here we go.
I want to get the brake angle on. So I've saved that little piece. Just keeps it a little bit more stable. Now, I'm working to the wood rather than to an angle. I want 15 mil, roughly, going to there. And there we go.
Flexible rulers are rather useful.
Ish. I am going to leave some room to play. Just in case.
Shot.
That's all good.
Fool. So I suspect this is the reason why I didn't do it in one cut, because I would need to move the bandsaw guard. And I figured I might as well move it once, cut the whole thing out, and then save a little bit of time that way. Although, on reflection, wasting time using masking tape to tape something on, etc., probably took longer. So, false economy. You can see it's cutting at a slight angle as well, and that's because I hadn't levelled or planed the sides and checked that they were parallel or anything. Luckily it makes no never mind. Body. Not going to make it totally around that cut. Or at least I could, but there's no real point. This is the all-access joint. It makes for a smaller gluing surface to the neck, because we've taken away quite a lot of the material. You can see how close the centre line is to the edge that I've chopped away there. But that gluing surface is actually perfectly fine and totally strong enough. It's one of those things. I suppose you can always take away material but not add it. So most people just leave as much material there as humanly possible. But it's the same fallacy that young guitar builders have with a new neck that they're making. The first 3 or 4 necks, or at least 2 or 3 necks, tend to be baseball-size huge things because they're worried about string tension and movement and stability and all that, and completely forget about comfort. In this case, a giant glue joint inhibits comfort and, as I've said, isn't absolutely necessary. I could just see myself pushing that body into the blade by mistake there.
There we go.
One body, one neck.
A guitar of sorts.
I like it.
Okay. So, because there's no major rush on this, I can do whichever bit of this I fancy. And I think I'm going to start on the neck. Because, yeah, why not? So I'm going to do a little bit of work on the neck for now, and we'll go from there.
Where we are is considering replacing that horrible vise. Oh, it's not horrible. It's just not as powerful as I require for most things. To plane the angle into the headstock properly, you want the headstock supported as much as possible behind, so where the bench is, and you need a sharp plane. And more clamps.
Do I have anything with a...
So the original low angle plane is definitely sharp enough, but it's set to take finer cuts. Whereas this number 5, I think, has a much wider mouth and is also sharp, but is set as more of a roughing tool at the moment. So use that to take away as much material as possible. You can also see my bench moving, and the bench is top heavy. And from day one, I've meant to do something about that, and I just haven't. And we're like 4 years down the road now, and rather regretting that. I need to put shelves on it or sandbags or something. You'll see I'm slicing through. This is very, very figured wood, which means it's very difficult to plane.
Okay, so some tear out.
Because of what I was saying. So slicing presents the blade at a steeper angle. No, not steeper angle, shallower angle. I've forgotten how to talk, and here I am recording voiceover. So it gives the blade a shallower angle and means that it cuts cleaner.
Less tear out. So you saw I'm obviously using highly figured wood here. I went over to my number 5, which has a larger open throat and is also one of the few sharp planes up there at the moment. And that ripped away a lot of the material, but obviously doing tear out. Doing tear out, it sounds like a teenage naughtiness. I then moved over to my Lie-Nielsen 164, which is a low angle plane and has the ability to have a much finer throat, or mouth, sorry. Throat as well, yeah, anyway. It's still not giving quite as perfect a finish as I want, and that's just because it's not, well, it's a little while since it was sharpened. So I'm just going to take that out, and it doesn't need massive work. So onto the Shapton stones, and I'm going to ignore the 500. I'm going to ignore the 500 and just start at 2000 grit and see where we end up.
These stones do need to be flattened fairly regularly. They're not totally impervious, but they are much, much harder and much harder wearing than standard ice bear water stones. I've done some videos on them if you want to check. But yeah, I absolutely love them. I'm unashamedly in love with these water stones. One of the main reasons actually is because of the small amount of water that is required to use them. As you can see, my bench is clean and dry. Well, dry, I suppose. That's really pretty.
Onto the 8000.
I must say it is less fun watching the sharpening happen than it is actually doing the sharpening. Still, so you can see I'm holding the blade with as many points of contact as possible. It's also resting inside the palm of my hand, and I have total control over it. It's something that happens. This bench moving has started to really annoy me. Just watching it move is really annoying me.
Yep. Pretty sharp.
Pretty sharp, meaning could definitely be better, but good enough for what we require here.
Not quite sharp enough, but it will be soon.
It's almost like the voiceover guy and the guy doing the sharpening is the same one.
So this is Auto Sol chrome polish, which is excellent stuff. And I've experimented with different strops. This is one of my favorite. I need to make one a bit wider, of course.
And out of horse butt leather, because apparently the bottom of a horse is the best leather for a strop.
Yep. I could happily spend another 20 minutes or more sharpening that, but don't really have the time, so I think that will do for now. So I want the mouth as closed as possible, and then we'll see how this does. Yep, minimal tear out. I can go even finer if I wanted to. Let's see.
The figuring is breaking up the shavings. I'm not giving lovely, long, pristine shavings here, but
there you go. So you can see, instead of hitting the wood straight on, I'm actually slicing it, which is lowering the break angle even more. The break angle? It's lowering the cutting angle even more. And with the small mouth, the low angle, and the sharp blade, the final result is fairly good. Doesn't have to be perfect, because I suspect I'm going to have a cap on there. But we'll see. Anyway, onwards. Okay, so I'm going to be taking away a lot of material from the neck blank, and I already have actually removed a lot from here. What I need to do is mark out the center line, because I don't want to lose that, and I'm going to plane this surface flat, Now, essentially that is to give me a reference point. I want to see if, or how much, if it does, the wood is going to move. If there's any tension in this piece of wood, removing the material will make it move in certain ways. I want to see what happens there. So, as a reference, there's a little bow in it, and yeah, I love the difference between unplaned and perfectly planed wood. Let's get you a close-up.
Shiny, not shiny. That vise will be replaced.
Lovely. Okay, so 2 pieces of wood. One with a couple of bone inserts and one not. And these are called winding sticks. So essentially it's for checking twist. So I'll be able to look over this and see if there's a difference. I can't do it from that side. Nope, no twist. Let's double check. Just in case my vise put any undue tension on the neck and that has been released, double check with it not under pressure. Yeah, that's lovely. Surprisingly useful tools, those. Okay, I'm going to redraw my center line and my nut line, and then hopefully this will be it, and I won't have to replane this. If there's any movement, I'm going to have to reclamp and plane it flat again. But that is later in the day. Such pretty wood. Truss rods. Sadly I have to break out a router and templates and nasty bits and pieces like that. And it's loud. I like handmade guitars. I like hand tools, sorry. I'm moving away from lots of machines and that. But anyway, I'm off to find a router. So, this is a cool little template. It allows us to route the truss rod, and with this jig there, it routes the truss rod access as well. And that is using a guide bush in the base of the router. Wow, what happened there? Crikey, I've had this router forever, like 12 years or so, and somebody's finally managed to break part of it.
Closer to 15, 16 years.
Okay.
Or more.
Anyway, so truss rod. We have a truss rod. These are a little bit longer than usual. So I need to go right to the end, basically. And she is. And it's going to end under the nut as well. Okay, that's interesting. Fair enough. I'm going to use the masking tape and super glue trick to hold it in place. As you can see, that's been done a lot.
Just grab the biggest possible chisel.
You should try not to get the super glue on the template you're using, but this is an old one, and one that our students use as well. Hence the mess. Do you know what? I'm actually going to go down and quickly put this. If the masking tape isn't holding well onto the template, then it could shift and totally mess everything up, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go and run this through a sander thicknesser or planer thicknesser. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Or seconds. See? Milliseconds.
Okay, much better. I do rather enjoy having what do I call it? A sander thicknesser. It's the jet sander thicknesser machine. I paid full price for that damn thing.
You sound so insulted.
And it's worth it. It is worth it. So I'm burnishing it down there with this fantastic tool. It is, yeah, awesome. Now, there's a couple of cracks in there. I'm wondering how deep they go. Anyway, this is why we're going with the carbon fibre anyway. Nope, that super glue is finished.
As I said, always looking for stuff.
I have more here. This stuff is going off.
Super glue has a shelf life.
It seems like I've had this on my shelf for too long.
Oh my goodness.
Damn it, I don't even have any accelerator. Okay. Line up the center lines. Okay. There we go. I'm going to leave that for a couple of minutes now because I don't have the accelerator. Well, maybe I can go and find some accelerator. A lot of guitar building, for me at least, is trying to find, because I'm not working on this all the time, I'm running the business and stroke or elsewhere, a lot of time is wasted finding things. If you're in your own small workshop, that's less of an issue. I have apprentices and luthiers and students and all sorts, and a lot of my stuff gets stolen to take downstairs or I lend it to people and there we go. Or I'm using jigs that live downstairs anyway. So yeah, there's a lot of running around. But anyway, this is now solid. Put the neck back in the vise. So, neck is solid, truss rod is centered. I'm a little bit foolish. I should have swapped this. The cutter that is in here is the one I'm going to need for doing that, but I've set up for doing the truss rod first, which is silly, basically.
Please forgive the background noise. This microphone I'm currently wearing appears to be a little bit louder than most, or more susceptible to rustle. There we go. Smooth movement. No, you can't fix it.
Yeah, somebody's properly dropped my router. That's annoying. This template doesn't go the full length of these new truss rods that we've just got, so I'm going to have to cut that up by hand in a little while, but that's not really an issue. So, wow, what the hell have they done? They finally killed my tool. That's really annoying. Okay, so set the depth, move it up 9 mil. So the depth stop is now going to stop once I hit 9 mil, and we'll be cool. Okay, I need to find some protection. Let's just put that down for now. Ear defenders and goggles.
Once again, that vise isn't really good enough for this sort of work. One of the first things I did when I first got this router was remove the dust extraction ports and all that jazz. It's a bad idea. I couldn't see, but that's because I didn't have a dust extractor that I could hook up to it. Or even know that I should. It was just something happened.
That's not fun.
That is not fun at all.
They've totally f***ed my router. Come in.
Are you not filming?
Oh, of course I'm filming. They've completely f***ed my
That's
router.
meant to be attached to it.
Language.
Look at this. I come back.
Oh!
The router's been dropped and destroyed. I've had this thing for about actually 14 years or more. My handle's screwed, and it seems... Hello everybody. So yes, this is a 1/2-inch collet with a sort of adapter in there, and apparently the adapter that was in this one is slippery, and that's not good. So there we go. Luckily, that's not. It's not caused any
Very much time for an overhaul.
any major issues. Although I'm still unhappy with the router. It's not doing very well. So, what do we do? I need to manually set my 0 now. So I'm going to use a little square on the bottom. So I've got the router cutter hanging over the edge of the template and a square on the bottom of the template giving me my depth. That's 0. There's 9mm. Well, how annoying. But this is why you wear protection. Goggles, hair defenders. Off we go.
Router cutters, if they do come loose in the router, tend not to do any damage. I've had it happen to me actually quite a few times now, and they tend to sort of just spin out in the slot or template, etc., unless you're very unlucky. It's when a router cutter shatters or explodes, or more to the point, whatever you're routing shatters and explodes, that you have to worry about, well, shards of metal and router and stuff. In between filming this and recording this voiceover, I was working on a Raw series guitar that was being filmed for something to do with the BBC. We'll tell you about that when it all comes live. But yeah, hit a large chunk of metal. That was fun.
That's off.
When an external somebody was filming me, which was even more fun. Ooh, look at that pretty wood.
That was unfortunate. However, could have been worse, could have gone deep, which it didn't. It just sort of went sideways a little bit. So essentially, what happened there was the internal collet was sliding around too much and didn't do its job anymore, which was annoying. I wish I'd realised. Bless me.
Bless you.
Okay, so now I need to do the same thing, but for the truss rod access up at the headstock, which means using the same jig and putting that over there. But I've got to do this first. Let's put this plane away. So that's where the nut is. That's my center line. That's my center line. Now, I should be able to just clamp this in place, to be honest. So, let's try that. My vice is in the way. That's not going to move. Minimum of faffery.
Faffery. So I'm very much doing this by eye and feel. Don't want to go too deep, of course. But I don't have a set depth really that we go to.
There you go.
Predominantly because the angle changes. It varies on handmade instruments like this. So, clear the bench off. Declamp. And admire this proto neck. We are in progress.
No movement yet. So that's pretty good. Now, I want to get the outline finalized.
We cut very, very close to the final shape.
Probably should have done this before the truss rod, actually. Anyway, that's okay. Wait. Okay.
I use medium viscosity superglue almost exclusively. Although this stuff is going off. That is a little bit thicker than it should be. Thin superglue has its place, but it's used sparingly, if at all. Now, if you have access to particularly good double-sided tape, you won't really need the masking tape and superglue trick. I've never really found one that is as inexpensive and easily available as masking tape and superglue, and leaves as little residue or causes as little fuss.
Nice. Leave that to cure for a minute. Downstairs
to the sort of main factory floor. This is one of Triton's new, sort of new and improved work centres, the router table attachment. I think we're also using camera audio now, so you can hear a difference. Swap the collets out. This is a 4-flute Radian cutter, specifically developed for guitar builders actually. And yeah, the top and bottom bearings make it a lot more flexible. You can see the total concentration on my face here. I really do not like router tables, and wherever possible I will avoid using them. You put the wood through backwards, essentially, to how I feel, because I spent so much time using a router by hand. It's all opposite, and I've never become natural at it, which is a bit strange. Maybe I would if I didn't avoid it so much, but hey. And this is why I took as little material as possible off at the bandsaw phase. Small amounts, being aware of where your fingers are. Watch your fingers. It looks so dangerous. There you go, fingers out the way. End grain, which is the correct way to do it. Carefully and slowly. Now I'm not doing the headstock. That's a different template, and it's much easier to do that using a spindle sander or something. Anyway. And there we go. Rip. I think I missed that.
Okay, there we go. So essentially we've reached the end of the day. There was much faffing and a lot less actually achieved than I would normally expect. But I have a neck. The outline has been routed tentatively. The truss rod channel is mostly there. I do need to make it a bit longer and fit this new, longer, better truss rod. I'm sure about the first two of those three things, but anyway, it's a company we've been dealing with before, so it should be the same quality. I just wish it was the same length. Anyway, the body is roughed out. During the process, I realized how we're actually going to quantify the timing, and that is that we're going to film, or I'm going to film every single minute of this build, basically. And when that footage is put onto the timeline, we will put a counter of some sort on it and say, okay, we filmed 90 hours of footage, minus obviously the first hour that was spent doing bits of drawing. I found that I couldn't actually draw and think coherently while being filmed. This is fine, but that was less so. But anyway, we're there. This is a build that is actually finally in progress, and there will be much more of it coming over the next, well, it's a series and it's an ongoing series. It's going to take rather a long time to build. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, let's hope we don't have any more router incidents like that last one. Thanks for watching. Click like and subscribe, all that jazz, and yeah, support our Patreon, etc. Thank you very much. Goodbye.